Hello YouTube, welcome to a new video. On today's video we are going to talk about how I process my raw images in Capture One. But before we dive into the video, don't forget to check out my digital store where you can grab some free stuffs and also purchase my premium lots, actions and lots more. Alright, just like I usually encourage you guys, always take your time and get your image right from the camera instead of wasting time in post-production fixing unnecessary mistakes. So for me, I always take my time and get my exposure as best as I can right from the camera, because here in Capture One I always like to fix my images from the exposure tab. So here under exposure, as you can see, for this image I don't have issue with exposure. But if I'm working with an image that I like and the image exposure is not good enough, like this image as you can see, I will just turn on my exposure warning and push up my exposure, paying attention to my model. As you can see, we have started seeing some red signs here, which means these areas are blown out, but don't worry, we get to fix that later. So I'll just pay attention to my subject. As you can see, we have already started seeing some warning up here on our clothes. We can decide to push it up until it started appearing on the skin if we like. So I think at this point is okay, and then we zoom out. Don't worry for the blown out areas here on the background. We will fix that later. So for the exposure, this is what I do. I turn on my exposure warning and increase my exposure level and stop immediately where I started seeing blown out areas on my subject. So for this image, as you can see, we don't have issue with exposure. Then there's no need for me to increase exposure for this particular image. For contrast, brightness and saturation, I don't like fixing them here. We get to that later. And then I close my exposure tab and then I open my high dynamic range. Here on my high dynamic range, I don't touch my highlight yet. I will get to that. But for shadows, if I'm working with an image that I feel it has some level of shadows, like this image for example, as you can see around her chin and jaws, if I feel I don't want to work with these shadows, I can work with it. But if I don't want to work with it, I can just push up my shadows and reduce the intensity of the shadows, as you can see. So that's what shadows does. So for this image, I don't have issue with shadows as well, because I use my reflector already while taking the image. I reduce the intensity of the shadows. So I will just move to my whites and blacks. I don't work with them, and then I close my high dynamic range. So getting down to my levels, this is where I like adding some level of contrast to my image. What I would do is just move this slider to the right until this area where it started picking up, and then I stop there. And then there to the left as well, I would just shift it until to reach the level where it started picking up, and then I stop right there. Notice we started seeing some level of blown out, so just like we started seeing on this image. So for this image, if I want to add some level of contrast, I would just maybe add a bit of it. As you can see, maybe 2, just exactly where it started picking up, and then I stop there. But notice we are having blown out areas on our background. The highlights are too much. So this is where I go back to my high dynamic range and dial down my highlight until I stop seeing the blown out areas. As you can see, here is our backlight. We don't have issue with that. So basically that's how I do and turn down the highlights. Just like in this image as well, we can just dial down our highlights and eliminate the blown out areas of the highlight, as you can see. Alright, I think this is okay, and then I turn off my exposure warning. So basically that's all I do under the exposure tab here. For vignetting, I don't like adding vignetting on portrait images, but if I'm working on wedding images, let's say for example this image or this image, and I want this my subject to stand out even more from the background, what I would do is just take down my vignetting down. As you can see, it is adding some level of darkness, shadows around her and making her to stand out. So let's do our before, after, before and after. That's it for vignetting. And then also for this image, we can take a look at the original image and do before, after, before and after. It's not too much, just too little, and made a difference. So I always advise you to take your image right from the camera so that you won't do too much in post-production. That will make your image to stand natural level. So that's it for the exposure tab. So after fixing my exposure, and then I will just move to my color grading tab here. So for the color grading tab, let's collapse these tabs here so that we can clearly see what we are going to work on. I usually start color grading my skin. So for skin, I always go to color editor here, and then I move to my skin tone. Notice we have basic, advanced and then skin tone. So this is what I use to color grade my skin tone. Alright, to color grade my skin tone, what I would do is just to select my color picker here, and then I target my midtone. Notice your skin is having highlight and shadow, so you just need to target where is in between your highlight and your shadows. That's your midtone, and you click it. So notice it sample our midtone here. So what we do here is we are going to just touch our hue. So let's try pushing it to the left. Notice if we push it all the way, it kind of make my skin to look a bit yellowish, and then if I move to the right, it kind of make my image to look kind of magenta look. So it depends on you, it depends on the skin of the model. You don't need to cram one particular movement of slider and be applying it for all your images. No. Every skin, every color of the skin of your model will require different moves of your slider to achieve the perfect skin tone you are looking for. So for this image, let's try moving a bit to the left, just a bit of it. I don't like being too much, like 0.6 I'll be fine. And then I can increase the level of saturation. As you can see, it increase and then it decrease the saturation of our skin. So I can just increase it a bit, and then for lightness, this increase the brightness and then reduce the brightness of your skin. So it depends on you. For this image, I don't need that. If you feel you want to work with it with the image you are working on, if you want to brighten up your skin or darken your skin, this is the slider you are going to use. So for uniformity, what this does is just kind of try and create uniformity of the skin of your model. Kind of try to harmonize the skin color along along the skin color of your model, ranging from the hand, the neck and the face. So what I would do is just to push it up so that it unify the skin tone of my model. Wow, this is nice. So if you do before and after, before and after, if you look closely, you realize it kind of unify the skin of the skin tone of our model from the face to the hand. There is kind of level of uniformity, and this really good look good on this image. So aside of the hue, we can just push up the saturation a bit more. I think this is okay. For the lightness, I don't need it for this particular image. I'm okay with the lightness of my skin. So basically that's what I do. Let's do before and after for the skin tone and see. Before, after, before and after. So basically that's it for color grading my skin. And if I feel I want to color grade like her clothes or anything on the background, I can just go back to my advanced option here, and then I target the particular color I want to color grade. As you can see, it target our header here. So here, if you feel to change the color to another different color, you can just move your hue slider, as you can see. As you can see, you can also increase the saturation, you can reduce the level of saturation, also you can increase the brightness, and you can reduce the brightness if you want to. Wow, this is nice. I really like this. So basically that's it for color grading. And looking at this image as well, let's try and see what you can do. As you can see, this is an outdoor image. If you feel you want to like change the color of the grass behind, we can target our green color here. Okay, we can desaturate it, we can increase the level of saturation. As you know, I'm not a fan of too much green on my image, then I usually take my green down. If I like, I can change the green to another different color, as you can see, and then I can also darken it down, and then I can brighten it up, as you can see. So basically that's it for color grading. And if I feel I'm okay with this image, I want to apply it for the rest of my images, I will just come over here to adjustment, and then I say copy adjustment, or I can come over here and then I click copy adjustment, and then I can also click, okay, if I click copy adjustment, I copy it, and then I'll go back and select apply adjustment, and then I toggle to another image and apply it. I will make sure I'm selecting the apply, and then I apply the color grading. Notice before, after, before and after. So that's how I'll paste it for the rest of my image. Only if I feel alright, this particular image needs some kind of adjustment, then I adjust for that particular image if needs be. So basically that's how I process my image, from exposure correction to skin color correction, and then to general color correction, maybe of the cloth or the background. And then I stop there and export my image to Photoshop and Retouch. This is what I do. I will just right click my image, edit with, and then I click on the Photoshop that I want to use for my retouching. So here on the settings, I always export my image into Photoshop as TIFF, and then I make sure my image is always on 16-bit to get better result while retouching my image. And then I keep it at uncompress, my color space at Adobe RGB 1998 to get better space to color grade my image. And then I click on edit variant, and it will take this particular image to Photoshop, where I will retouch my image, and then I export my image right there from Photoshop to JPG. So basically that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like, share and leave a thumbs up, as it makes a huge difference in supporting the channel. Let's see in another video.